Welcome, everybody, to episode number 11 of the Merck at Work podcast. Today, I'm excited to have Rick Roycroft, the Chief Commercial Officer from Advantis Health Partners, join us. Welcome, Rick.
Hey, good morning. Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you join the Merck at Work podcast today.
Likewise. Always great to interact with this team.
Yeah. Well, what we like to do to get started is share some of your career background and kind of what brought you to Advantis Health Partners and the position that you're in today. So, if you would just give the listeners a little bit of background into yourself and how that's going now in your career.
Yeah, sure. We got about 3 hours, right? So
yeah.
No, I think how I got to where I am today. I started early in my career as with the industrial engineering operations research background. I was fortunate enough to enter into the healthcare industry right after finishing up an engineering degree, where everything was really geared toward the manufacturing space. Even it did some work in that space for a while, but as a result of that, ended up working for several of the large national GPOs. Started my career with Sun Health, which was regional at the time, and was with them up through the Premier AMHS Sun Health merger, which is now Premier in market. Mm-hmm. And really was with that organization for a good while, and up through the merger, but also had the opportunity to work for VHA Inc., which is now Vizient, obviously, for the next 10 years. Really moving on to a national scene, then working with their members, across the country on process performance improvement. And that's really where I got into a focus on supply chain, as VHA was looking to expand and work with the UHC organization. The leaders at the time felt there was an opportunity to really look at metrics and performance of the healthcare supply chain more broadly, beyond just the GPO side. So that was a great experience and opportunity. Obviously, a lot of changes there, which led to an opportunity to go see things from a different perspective with the Big Four, with KPMG, short stint there. That was an entree right into the distribution wholesaler side of things, with AmerisourceBergen, now Cencora, leading their services arm, really more on the pharmaceutical side of the business, but heavy emphasis on supply chain. And really the interest of the leaders were, how do we be more strategic with our clients and help them think just beyond flow of pharmaceuticals. And great opportunity there, leveraging what we were doing in terms of new greenfield, heavy automation. So a different look at the logistics operations side of supply chain. And then got a call that somebody I had worked with way back when, went to school with, was with the Med Assets organization, and had a need, and invited me to join them. And I served in a leadership role there in the Southeast, again, more focused, really selling all the capabilities broadly. So not only our supply chain solutions and advisory, but also into some of the other tools and capabilities that they had. And Carl, at that time, a lot of consolidation was going on, and I said, you know what, I've been a part of an advisor and consultant of all these larger organizations that have other things to their business. I think I need to be in just a services arm. So I joined Huron Consulting, which is a nationally known consulting organization, leader in healthcare, and I was with them for the 10 and a half years or so, and that led me up to Advantis, because I really got the opportunity to meet the leaders at Bon Secours Mercy Health, right as there were some interesting things going on with the organization, with the merger of Mercy Health, Bon Secours, change in supply chain leadership, and that kind of leads us to Advantis. I was part of helping Dan Hurry bring his vision to life in terms of he definitely sees and feels that there's opportunity to improve how we do things in the healthcare supply chain. And part of our focus and philosophy is how do we um, lift all boats in healthcare and look at things differently. So exciting time. And then that allowed the door to open for me to actually officially join the team in this capacity. So been here a few months now, really thrilled to be here. And that was a quick walk forward, but hopefully that's helpful to you. I'll see if you have any questions around that. But, home for me, I live in Carolina. I'm Carolina native, live just northeast of Charlotte, love it here. And,
Yeah.
get to travel and see the U.S., but this is home.
So, when it comes to college basketball, where does your alliance?
That's a dangerous question at this time, but so a Durham native, I grew up a Duke fan, and then
Good time to be a Duke fan.
I went to school at NC State, so I was there for at least one national championship and a great run last year. Not so much this year though. So
Yeah. Well, I know it gets dicey there in North Carolina. Here in the Louisville and Indiana area, we have a lot of the same kind of feelings about college basketball. So definitely understand that. But it's a fun time. The
love
Final
March
Fours.
Madness. Growing up in this area was always exciting. The ACC's changed quite a bit. I guess it's the All Coast Conference now. It's Northeast Atlantic, and then I don't know. It's going to be an interesting Final Four. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ed, definitely appreciate you sharing that career path. Anybody that hears that can understand that you know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to supply chain, the GPOs, and all of that. So that segues into my next question for you is what are some of the overall healthcare and GPO specific trends that you're seeing in the market today? Now, that could be Advantis oriented or, just broad, however you'd want to describe those things.
yeah, no, absolutely. I've kind of come at it from maybe a couple of different lenses, but first off, I'd say it's an exciting time to be in healthcare supply chain. I mean, supply chain leaders are really in a position and hopefully supported by their organizations to reimagine their strategic role within their institutions. I mean, for years we've talked about basement to the boardroom in terms of the relevance and importance of supply chain in healthcare because we've seen it in other industries. So healthcare leaders today, I think part of that is breaking down organizational silos.
Mm,
This era of isolated departments, I think, is ending. Supply chain leaders are prioritizing internal alignment, looking to bridge communication gaps with frontline staff, clinical teams, executive leaders. And that holistic approach aims to standardize communication and really create a more integrated organizational approach. And you get there by closer collaboration between all teams, creating shared communication protocols, and really creating cross-functional understanding of organizational goals more broadly. Not lost on any of us, I would say, is technology and data as a new
mm,
strategic differentiator. In an increasingly data-driven world, I mean, you can't turn on anything without somebody talking about AI these days.
yeah.
But clearly, supply chain professionals recognize technology and advanced analytics as crucial competitive advantages. However, they're not without their challenges in implementation. And some of those challenges include limited expertise in healthcare supply chain technology, the difficulty in integrating complex data systems, and then a
Mm,
need for robust financial reporting and spend analysis tools. I think another area that is we're seeing currently in the industry is just this focus on financial insights, expansion of value analysis, clinical integration, however you think about that. But supply chain no longer just being only about cost cutting; it's about providing value that balances financial cost as well as quality of care.
yeah.
And today, obviously, resiliency comes into that equation as well. Leaders are demanding, financial insights to drive more sophisticated approaches to how we evaluate contract value. How do we analyze areas we don't typically see in supply chain, like purchase services? provide meaningful financial reporting, and really understanding the total cost beyond just simple price comparisons. I mentioned resilience, certainly supply chain resilience, risk management, prevalent today, especially coming out of the pandemic that exposed several vulnerabilities in our healthcare supply chain that remain today. Thereby, leaders are proactively building resilience by developing strategies for managing product shortages and trying to mitigate those, creating safety stock protocols, exploring consignment programs. We've seen a resurgence, a refocus on building central distribution centers to help with that. And then
Mhm.
obviously improving supplier engagement and communication, all important. Additionally, Kyle, I'd say operational standardization, right, as a path to efficiency.
Yeah.
Standardization emerges as a critical component, particularly in high stakes, high volume areas like the operating rooms and other procedural areas. By
Mhm.
standardizing procedures, tracking perpetual inventory, and aligning processes, healthcare systems can, improve outcomes, reduce variability, lower expenses, and enhance overall efficiency. Two more areas I would talk about, and I know we'll touch on this a bit more as well, is the changing role of the group purchasing organizations. Leaders today are looking for GPOs that offer more than just price negotiations. They
Mhm.
really want a strategic partner who can provide strategic business intelligence, offer technical support, help them navigate complex market changes, as well as support their smaller hospitals and non-acute facilities with comprehensive solutions. And then finally, pharmacy and supply chain convergence. Clearly an emerging trend, the increasing alignment between pharmacy, which often aligns to the clinical side, pharmacy operations and supply chain management coming together. Organizations recognize the potential synergies and are working to come together to integrate operational processes, share data and insights, create more holistic management strategies, and move from being reactive to proactive. So all that to say, supply chain today, strategic, tech-enabled, and organizationally integrated. Supply chain leaders are moving beyond just traditional cost approaches to create value within their healthcare organizations. And if we get this right by embracing technology, fostering cross-functional collaboration, and maintaining truly a patient-centric view, our teams are positioning themselves as critical drivers and key leaders in organizational success. I touched on a few of these, but I think, I mentioned cost reduction. It's not just about cost reduction. However,
Mhm.
with some of the pressures that we've seen on our financial statements in the organizations, there is a continued need to execute on cost reduction broadly. Traditional areas such as contracts or supply contracts are not always yielding sufficient savings as the industry has been historically focused on price. Value now is really achieved through consolidation, standardization, and utilization focused initiatives, as well as reducing waste in the system. What are you using? Why do you use it? And it helps, obviously, when you can leverage technology to continuously help identify those areas of opportunity. I mentioned this too, but I think the scope of supply chain leaders and the purview of spend that they have visibility to is expanding to include more areas of spend outside of just the normal, to include things like purchase services,
Mhm.
really anything that a health system might procure or buy or invest in, even to get into facilities, construction, et cetera. So really gaining an understanding of service needs and their associated costs in order to determine what makes the most sense. Do we insource, outsource? What's best for the organization? And then I talked about that additional value. A good service agreement establishes a strong basis for cost savings as well as service coverage. It's like cost and quality in the clinical arena, but now we're thinking about it from a service perspective. And the
Mhm.
real value, Kyle, comes after the agreement is signed. Transparent, vulnerable relationships between the supplier and the provider, where risk is shared, develops a foundation for programmatic change and innovation versus just a contractual obligation. All that to say, today's environment requires our leaders to evaluate the broader value proposition of outsourcing people, process, and technology, especially in these high cost service areas. And if you pick the right partner, work with the right partner, it shouldn't be about eliminating roles, disrupting culture, but actually bringing benefit and additional assets to people, process, technology that make the organization run. And then finally, in the world of supply chain, disruptions are constant. You need a GPO partner that prioritizes strong supplier relationships that show up when you need them most, ensuring that a resilient supply chain so your front line has what you need when you need it. So those are a few thoughts just in terms of, I know I touched on both broader healthcare and some GPOs trends, but what else are you thinking there, Kyle?
Yeah, no, you touched on a lot there, and one of the things I just kept going back to is you know we built a platform to drive value and do some of that consolidation and bringing value towards the medical equipment purchase side and capital planning and all those thoughts and the things that you were talking about is exactly why we've done some of the services and products that we've done. So it just kind of brought some confirmation to some of the things that we're working on as well. And so I appreciate you sharing those things. One of the other things you touched on a little bit was post COVID and how that affected supply chain management. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what COVID did to the whole supply chain world and now how we look at things differently beyond that time frame.
No, absolutely. And, it's a little bit of, mixed blessing there, right? Because COVID was challenging
Yeah.
for many of our leaders and certainly for, supply chain leaders. However, what it did in a positive fashion is elevate the importance, visibility, and appreciation for supply chain because
Mm-hmm.
I can share, in my role with Huron, one of the things that we were helping some clients, and we saw this, right? You had those that got ahead of it, and truly the haves and the have-nots. I mean, literally, where we were helping clients figure out, can we run procedures next week? Do we have what we need
Yeah.
to operate? Critical time. But anyway, to your question, I think what are some of the things that we've seen, post COVID? I'd say a greater awareness, certainly an interest in sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
um, an increased awareness around resiliency, transparency, and that risk mitigation.
Yeah.
A lot of effort around gaining insight to upstream supply chain information, but that work continues. It's not always or has not yet yielded a true difference in sourcing activity and contract awards. Provider organizations have taken steps to build up emergency inventory levels, to help mitigate against those short-term disruptions. Additionally, we have seen and continue to see more interest in domestic manufacturing. For example, at Advantis Health Partners, for example, we've teamed up with Emerge Manufacturing, an onshore manufacturing plant, uh, quote, made in the USA for the world, around
Mm-hmm.
PPE for healthcare workers, first responders, and other essential workers. Our parent company, Bon Secours Mercy Health, is an investor in Emerge, and Advantis is one of Emerge's initial clients. And Dan talks about this as our leader, but we think domestic production of PPE supports a more resilient supply chain and reduces the economic pressures on our hospitals and health systems. Sourcing and manufacturing domestically also reduces our carbon footprint. So, as we're talking about, the pandemic really exposed an over reliance on offshore manufacturing. So, with the merge up and running, we have changed that scenario and helped limit and some of that risk and exposure. We've also seen and continue to see, I mentioned cost reduction, but you have to get beyond price, right? I mean, a lot of organizations have spent a lot of time partnering with their GPOs, focusing internally on themselves on cost, but really on the price side of things. The real value is the emphasis on, and we're seeing this today, on standardization and utilization management to reduce spend. And along with that is where's waste in the system where we can reduce waste and take out cost. We've also seen, as a result of that, increased adoption of a clinically integrated supply chain, a greater role, if you will, of clinicians and value analysis, clinical integration, however you think about that, but the role and engagement of clinicians and physicians in evaluating and really looking at this, as I said earlier, from a beyond just a cost equation, but it's really the total value, cost, efficiency, reimbursement, really a full 360 view. And then lastly, and I touched on it, but just sustainability, but now sustainability as a supply chain metric, where we're actually tracking our ability to be resilient and have a sustainable, healthy supply chain.
Yeah, that's great. Tell me a little bit more about the emergence of Advantus and your focus, your more targeted approach.
Yeah, as I think about this, I think about the impact to GPOs, coming from COVID, which will lead into, I think, a little bit about Advantus. Today, one of the things that we need or coming through the pandemic is really providers' needs from their GPOs have changed. As I mentioned, in addition to good pricing for products, the ability to provide actionable data, risk mitigation strategies, real transparency to manufacturer upstream activity, and support them beyond the traditional commodity product categories are really now what our clients and I think healthcare members are seeking of these GPOs. And then the other key area I think, Kyle, is just the importance and the rise of the digital supply chain has become just as critical, as the physical aspects of supply chain. So with that said, and kind of as a backdrop, I'll touch on just the kind of the emergence of Advantus and sort of our approach. But really in 2021, Bon Secours Mercy Health launched Advantus Health Partners, really as part of its portfolio of customizable business-to-business healthcare offerings. Advantus began as an innovative supply chain department within a large health system. So one thing that excites me is we are provider owned and we're operators, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that strategic approach successfully allowed us to navigate extreme supply chain fluctuations during the COVID pandemic, enabling critical protection and sustained patient care. One thing for us, quickly became clear, and that is that traditional transactional approaches to the healthcare supply chain were no longer working. And with that, Advantus could share a unique supply chain model that we feel can help other health systems, set themselves up for long-term sustainability and success. So with that, and a strong desire to disrupt, it's not just the traditional GPO industry. It's more about what I said earlier in terms of elevating the importance and relevance of supply chain and really transforming the business and the industry as a whole. So with that as an advanced operations model and years of expertise across our team, Advantus offers a portfolio of solutions to further drive value beyond just contracting. We believe a strategic relationship brings value beyond price, which, as we've talked about, is critically important. So we identify our partner solutions by seeking a narrower supplier base that starts with best-in-class pricing, but goes beyond that to really create long-term value through continuous optimization. So instead of relying on contract expirations or ongoing resets, we understand that a one size doesn't fit all and offer a modular approach to meet the unique needs of our clients and our partners. A few other things that I think, set us apart. As I mentioned, we are provider owned. So as provider owned and as operators, we don't ask customers to do things that we wouldn't do ourselves. So we are our own laboratory. And we test it before and make sure it works. So therefore we eat our own cooking. We don't ask for exclusivity in relationships. And oftentimes, and this is really where we sit today, we play as an advocate with other GPOs, an enhancement, if you will, to other capabilities. Importantly, we work collaboratively and strategically with suppliers and our members to achieve savings and build that resilience that's so important. I think another unique thing is when we think about metrics in supply chain and how you measure success, is we consider the full economic impact of operating the supply chain. So it's more than price at the pump or price of a contract, but
Mhm.
what does it take to truly own, operate a supply chain end to end for a health system? And how does that show up on an income statement or a financial statement of an organization? As you think about it, because, within Advantis, we're operating the supply chain into all the procedural areas. So it doesn't stop at the door of the OR or the cath lab. We're hands on working with our partners in those areas to fully manage what they need, make sure they have it, right time, right price, et cetera. Advantis also offers flexibility in our financial support models, so being creative and innovative there. And then our belief is that business should grow based on value created. So if there's value created, then it makes sense that you do more. And if not, um, there's no reason to expand that. So again, kind of putting our money where our mouth is. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I really like the innovation and uh, the approach that you all are taking to be very value driven.
Yeah, like I said, there's a real passion. As we look across a very seasoned, experienced leadership team, but that flows down, through the organization and each person, individual, if you will, playing a key role. But I also like the fact that we go beyond, as I said, just getting a contract in place, but what happens after the contract is in place? Is it driving the value that we expected? What's happening within the areas that it's impacting from an operations point of view, from a clinical effectiveness point of view, from a quality perspective? And if it's not, then we've got to do something different.
Yeah, that leads right into another question I had for you. Being uh, asset management, capital equipment oriented company, what's Advantis's approach towards the capital equipment side for inside the GPO?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kyle. And I think it is. I don't know if it's unique, but I think it works well, and serves us well and our members well. But um, really, Advantis works with our suppliers to provide our members with a comprehensive portfolio of capital equipment. We're leveraging, actually, just recently launching a new online platform, Advantis Supplier Connection, that connects our capital equipment suppliers directly with our members to provide them with insight to agreements, an ability to select from configurable equipment options, and to receive quotes and actually, and then obviously to go on and execute the agreement all through that online platform. So you'll hear more about that shortly, but wanted to share that's one area that we're doing differently. Our philosophy at Advantis is that health systems should get the most out of their capital asset investment. That's why we've partnered with GE Healthcare, for example, to provide a comprehensive healthcare technology management program for our members. That program moves beyond just the break fix, taking a more proactive approach to equipment lifecycle management and performance. So, with that in mind, we understand the entire equipment fleet, identifying short term, long term budget considerations, as well as overall strategic planning. We also focus on optimizing equipment uptime to improve delivery of patient care. As you all know, revenue generation begins to improve because you're running at the top of your efficiency. So again, as you think about total cost of ownership operations, beyond just price paid, but what's happening operationally that has impacts, again, on the financial statement or income statement. So again, staying with the GE example, our agreement with them controls costs with shared risk, offers a simple, scalable, capitated pricing model that makes it easier for all in the operations. Our program's built on insights and analytics from the front line to ensure providers receive the best value through end of life disposition and replacement. So as we think about, assets and capital broadly, optimizing performance and efficiency so you can meet on time periodic maintenance completion, average time to repair, corrective maintenance response time, dedicated call center time to answer, and recall response timeliness. All key metrics, KPIs, if you will, that we track and report. And as such, our program outlines really a strong governance model with quarterly management reviews that cover KPIs, trends, changes, and improvement work that clearly outline accountability from both Advantis and our industry partners to meet and exceed expectations of our operator clients. So that's some of the things that we think about and how we approach, capital and asset management here at Advantis. So I don't know if that's helpful, but
Yeah, I really like, you talked a little earlier about actionable data, and I think the things that you guys are doing is such a focus on that actionable data and the analytics. You're really trying to drive value through those things, and that's what we're thinking so similar because that's the kind of things that we're working on constantly. So I really like the approach, and I think you guys are doing the right things.
awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's our opportunity to, as I said, continue to have an impact on the industry and, have a real passion for the role of supply chain and the leaders and, the folks that are um, taking care of, the folks that are extending that right to the patient. Right. So,
Correct. Yeah, it all boils down to optimizing that patient care at the end of the day.
absolutely.
Well, typically, like how we try to wrap these up is to kind of dive into a little bit about you personally, to share, what makes Rick go outside of the office. So, what are some of the things that you enjoy while you're not working? Hobbies, family things, whatever it might be.
Yeah. All important, right? Because it's not all about work, right, Tom?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, can't can't save the world every day.
Yeah, you got to put your cape down every now and then.
Yeah, well, we touched on sports earlier, so
Yeah,
definitely a sports fan, especially basketball, college basketball this time of year, especially
yeah,
growing up in ACC country. A lot of fun with that. Football as well, although it's changing, but the ACC's not been a football powerhouse. But I enjoy my wife and I enjoy football, college, NFL doesn't matter.
yeah,
Always enjoy football season. But outside of that, love the outdoors. Love to be outside when we can, whether that's working around the house or in the yard. But hiking, enjoy golf. I'm not ready for the pro circuit, but enjoy being out on the golf course, being on the water. Grew up a big water skier and then found snow skiing, so enjoy
yeah.
skiing of both varieties.
There you
Not as crazy these days as I once was, but still enjoy it. And yeah, those are a few things. I've gotten more into mountain biking lately, so we have some nice trails here in the Carolinas. So um, I've had a few crashes, but I try not to do anything too extreme. So
go. Yeah, I was gonna say, being in the Carolinas, you've kind of got it covered. You've got ocean, mountains. You've got a big, as you mentioned, sports, basketball, golf is that's kind of a golf mecca. So you're kind of in an epicenter of all the things you enjoy.
no, absolutely, we're blessed to be in the Carolinas, and like I said, it's I'm a native, so I grew up in the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham area, and then moved to Charlotte when I got into healthcare, and I've had the opportunity and the privilege to travel pretty much coast to coast,
Yeah,
and a lot of nice places there, but this is home, so
yeah. It's always good to come home.
always good to come home, and we have two sons, and so we love spending time with them. They're grown, and spread out. They expanded further than I did moving here. So our oldest lives in Salt Lake City, so that's a nice place to go visit.
Yeah,
We'll
it
be out
is
there with
beautiful.
his family and the grandkids next week, and then our youngest son lives up in the Cambridge, Boston area. So another fun place to get to.
Nice. Yep, those are good spots. And speaking of golf, we're about a week out from the year's first major at the Masters, so that's exciting too.
That's right. Yeah, that's always a fun one to enjoy. So we'll
Yep.
see what that holds this year. So
Yeah, for sure. Well, Rick, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Anybody listening can definitely uh, catch a glimpse of your expertise in the supply chain and GPO world. So it was great to have you join the show and share some of those things. We'll have to do it again sometime.
yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate you having me on, and it's great to be with you, and look forward to doing it again.
Sounds good. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Kyle. Have a great weekend.
You too.